everybody, and welcome to another edition of Live With It. I am Sarah Lane.
And I'm Scott Johnson.
And Scott Johnson, you are here today, not only because you're great, but you have been living with Valve's Steam Deck, the handheld game console, for quite some time now, more than 6 months, right?
Yeah, almost. Well, it'll be a year in July, so we got a little time left, but enough time to make some pretty solid judgment calls about what I think of this device.
Excellent. So Live With It we've been doing this for a few years now. And it previously, because it is now, we're expanding because people live with all sorts of things on this team. So we're trying to expand the show in ways that we think will be most fun for all of you. But it used to be Sarah lives with a product for 3 months. I will continue to do that. But some of us have been living with products for, as Scott said, going on 6 months or even a month or anywhere in between. So we're going to keep doing that. But Scott, let's start from the very beginning. Many people who are listening or watching us will know exactly what the Steam Deck is. But for those who don't, what do we got?
All right. So it kind of came out of the blue. There has been a rocky past. Don't have to get too deep into it, but Steam has had a rocky experience with trying to create their own hardware and drive players to want to buy what they called Steam boxes for a while. They had Steam Links, which were ways of connecting to your TV via wireless through the house. They have their own controller. All of these were okay, right? Not great, not world-ending. People were just like, oh, okay, that's kind of neat. I'll just keep moving over here. They've done well.
And just before we keep going, why just okay? Like, what was wrong?
I'm not quite. Honestly, it's a little hard to say. Part of it was when they did this, the Steam machines with the Steam boxes. It was kind of a spite move. They were having a real war with Microsoft at the time. That's softened up since in the convening years, but at the time they were just not getting along, and they were like, "Fine, we're really going to push this Linux initiative. We're going to push Proton, which is our custom fork of some really cool ways of emulating Windows software, so that there's really no difference between what you play in Windows and what you would play outside of it, and all of that." What's interesting is a lot of those missteps, because they just didn't sell that well, led directly to the Steam Deck. Lessons learned there are definitely implemented here, and all the heavy lifting and work they did on Proton back then, which again is this sort of emulation layer on a Unix-based PC or computer or device, is what drives the device now. And I don't think they would have been nearly as far along had they not been going crazy trying to do this sort of spite product back then. But a lot of gamers just didn't buy into it. So they moved on and they were like, all right, what do we want to do now? Well, in the light of the success of the Switch, and also the desire for the Steam platform to move around a little bit more, somebody over there had the brilliant idea of let's do a portable, and let's do a fairly high-end portable that'll play games as new in AAA as Elden Ring and as old and janky as your old NES games on an emulator, and pretty much everything in between. There are definitely exceptions to that, but that's essentially the device: a large screen, lots of capacity if you buy the higher capacity, I should say, and lots of capability there in a relatively bulky and heavy device that I have fallen in love with over the last 9 to 10 months.
Well, so that's a good start. You mentioned, bulky device that you love, different price points. So let's talk a little bit about what we have going on under the hood, and depending on your budget and your need, what your options are.
Well, for those watching visually, you can see it's got this is the screen. This is my device. There are 2 analog sticks. There are your usual 4 buttons on the face, and your select and your all that sort of stuff. Your bumpers underneath. Everything's there. That's basically the device. And here are the basic specs of what a Steam Deck is. Processor is a custom AMD APU. It's based on their Zen 2 and RDNA 2. The CPU performance is comparable to a Ryzen 3000. So if you're familiar with that particular video card in a desktop sense, then you'll know what you're looking at here. GPU performance is comparable to a Radeon RX 6000 series, and I would say that is also plenty fast for most of what you might be throwing at this thing. The display is 7 inches. It is a 1280 by 800 touchscreen. You may say 1280 by 800, that doesn't sound very high def. It really doesn't need to be. These devices output just fine at that resolution. And in fact, it probably benefits it because a lot of games that maybe struggle under the load of graphical capabilities or whatever, much easier to run that stuff at 1280 by 800. And on a device screen like this, it looks great. The memory, 16 gigabyte of LPDDR5 RAM. The pricing varies, and this is where things get a little bit weird. If you want to get the 64 gigabyte version, that's based on an eMMC drive, SSD. That much storage, you're going to spend $399. I would not recommend doing that. There are a ton of video games that are more than 64 gigabytes in size. That may seem crazy, but in this day and age, that's actually kind of small. And now, if you're buying this device and you were only going to play small indie games or retro games, emulation software, something like that, then this is plenty big. 64 is perfect for you. But everything else in this thing is overkill for that. So it's a weird entry level because it's really hamstringed in terms of what you can play on there. 529 is the next step for the mid model. That's 256 gigabytes of NVMe SSD storage. This is important because both this and the top end model are both using the NVMe technology, which we could go into all the tech around it, but really what it boils down to, extremely fast load times, way faster than you're used to, even on regular SSDs on desktops.
Well, and I know that, you mentioned $529 for the 256 gigabyte model. If you go up to 512, I mean, it's not double the price.
No.
Then we're just at $650.
Right.
So again, more expensive, but it's if you want more under the hood, that seems like the right way to go.
Yeah, I agree. The mid range is pretty good. So my daughter got the mid range. She's also a pretty hardcore gamer, and she loved mine. She's like, I got to get this, so she picked hers up, and she's been very happy with 256. I think that is a nice happy medium. It means that you'll install some big things and later uninstall them more often to make room for something else. But we're all kind of used to that with mid-range PCs and things, right? So it's not that crazy of a deal. And again, this is dedicated entirely to gaming, unless you're going to do something weird and hack it and install Windows and a bunch of other stuff, which you can do. I should mention there's a ton of weird stuff people are doing with their Steam Decks rather than just using it factory ready. But that's a pretty good one, and I think the price is right. However, if you're already spending $629, I think it's worth the jump to the $649. Or sorry, if you're already paying $529, the jump to $649 is worth it at $512. I found just that to be the sweet spot. I mean, obviously, it's the biggest I can get also. Although, I should say, the one thing that people really like about the device, outside of its core capabilities, it's very hackable. Open it up, add new things, replace the drive. Lots of guides online how to do this. I've seen people running 2 terabyte SSD drives in this thing. If you really want to go nuts and you're that kind of tinkerer, this device will let you do all of those things.
All right. So you mentioned the screen. You mentioned the capabilities. What if you were to say dock this, stream it to a larger television, do some fun stuff like that? Can you?
Yes, you can. In fact, I'm glad you asked. So right now this thing is attached. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's attached to a dock, or it's sitting in a dock. I bought a third-party dock. You can buy the first-party Steam one for about $89, I believe, is the current price. It's a little pricey, in my opinion. And I think I got this one for $20, and it does essentially the same thing. So it adds a gigabyte Ethernet port. It adds power through the dock, obviously. And oh gosh, what else? USB, multiple USB 3.0 connectors that also go in there, and also an HDMI out. And the HDMI out will carry any signal that you're playing from the device to a television or a larger display. The one thing I haven't tried, just because I just didn't get around to it or thought that much of it, but supposedly games that will support 4K displays will let you out. This will let you output to 4K.
Yeah.
It will not probably run optimally, or you'll have to cut down on a bunch of specs, because at 4K with full settings in a game like Elden Ring it's going to choke on that. At least that's my assumption, and I'm sure the work has been done on this, and I just haven't seen it. But it does work. It works in the way the Switch does. You plug it in, the TV immediately recognizes it. you're good to go. And you don't need to use this built-in controller. You can Bluetooth up to, I think it's 5, I believe it's 5 total external wireless controllers, Xbox controllers, PlayStation 4 controllers, PS5 controllers if you want, just like you can with Steam and a computer. And now you have a console in the living room, which is something that Steam has been trying to do. The Steam boxes was an attempt to do that. The Steam Link was an attempt to do that. And building their own controllers were an attempt to make it more of a family room friendly ecosystem so that people could use Steam in that way. They finally have a way to do that. And they took the Switch model and said, well, not only that, they can take it anywhere they want to. This thing's very portable. Doesn't come with the dock. The controllers don't disconnect from the side. So there's some key differences here. But it is definitely not only doable, but very easy to set up and do.
Well, speaking of controllers and, just kind of what you have on the device itself, what stands out to you as, if you're comparing it to the Switch or, anything else that's a smaller form factor that can do a lot?
Well, what's surprising to me when I first started this thing and turned it on was how smart the interface is. And again, a lot of this work had been done previously because for years now, maybe even a decade, Steam has had something called big picture mode, which was a way of like taking the very computer-based Steam interface, which just works like, a computer app, and have it blow up full screen, make it controller ready, have the entirety of your library and the store and everything very navigatable with a controller and very couch sort of experience. Mm-hmm. And they had that going already. Part of that was, for what they were doing with Steam boxes, but also just in general, they had it as a thing you could do. And that translates really well to this device. So a lot of that work was already done. And they've tweaked it, of course, but it's now on this device. So using it in terms of like going to the store, finding your library, getting the games down that you want to play, finding out which ones will run and which ones won't. Some older games aren't necessarily optimized for it. Some work and they don't know it yet. There's maybe a new game and there's a question mark as to whether it will work. Mm-hmm. I always just say download it and try. Often they do. And then you're amazed. It's like, well, I played Cyberpunk, which is supposed to be one of the most demanding technical games ever made. And I'm playing Cyberpunk on this device at 60 frames plus per second with no hitch, no glitch. A perfect experience. That is really a surprising thing, and that is something you can't do with your Switch. The Switch is basically a cell phone from 2017, and it runs that way today. And there's again, I love Nintendo. Nothing wrong with Nintendo, but this thing is a beast compared to it in terms of performance, and outpaces it in every way. Nintendo may have an answer for that for whatever they do for the next Switch, but as it stands right now, it packs a real punch. The other big strength of the device right out of the gate, especially if you already have games, is just that. You already have games. It's not like I have to buy a new machine and then go, well, I got to go buy the games that are made for it. I have 2,000 games in my Steam library. A lot of them were free codes, so don't think I'm weird, but lots of games that range from very light-end stuff to big, heavy stuff, and it's already there. So when I bought this device, it already had the potential of having thousands of games to play without me having to spend a dime. Yeah. And you can buy it on one and play it on the other. All the saves are cloud save between any Steam supporting devices, including Macs, including PCs, including streamed over the air, whatever. All that progress is saved. So you don't have to worry about living in a separate world now on just this device. I can go back and forth. No
does
problem.
It support all Steam games? Is there
not
any
every
game
Steam
that okay?
So what it does is it has a system. Let's see if I can pull it up so I can tell you what it looks like. It is, let's see here. If we go to the store, and I'll try to show this if I can. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the store on the device, which is just a quick click away, and they immediately tell you their first tab is great on deck, games that are really good on the Steam Deck, and they want you to try those. They want you to buy those first, and it's a little green check mark. Think of it as a Twitter verification for Steam Deck games. Except
these games have been vetted.
That's right. And they'll recommend those. They'll also tell you in your library what games you have that are marked as fully Steam compatible or Steam Deck compatible. But they have different classifications. They have the fully green check mark, and then they have one below it that's like sort of a yellow one with a question mark. And you can look at these in real time and say, oh, well, the reason it says this is the text is kind of small on the screen. Or this needs, at one point, this needs you to enter some information that you'll need to bring the keyboard up for, which is easy to do on the device. It's not hard, but they'll let you know when it's stuff that's like, well, it's a little screwy, but it runs.
Yeah.
Then there's some that'll say it doesn't run, but I'll do a Reddit search and someone will say, oh, you just got to tweak this little launch line and bam, it'll run. And sure enough, like I play a lot of Elder Scrolls Online. It's a big, massive multiplayer role-playing game. And I really wanted to play it on here so that I could destroy any sort of nightlife that I have and just stay up all night playing that. And sure enough, with a couple of tweaks that the community came up with, it works like a champ. Yet the status in there still says, got a big cross through it saying this is not Steam Deck compatible. So it's kind of all over the place. And that's why a lot of people, when you talk to them about it, owners will say, try downloading it. Worst case is you just uninstall it after because it didn't work, and try it. There's really no harm. And they're right. And I found a bunch of stuff that was either listed as unknown for compatibility or straight up wasn't compatible that absolutely was compatible. And it changes all the time. So I do think Steam could be better about that.
Yeah, that seems like, as a potential, purchaser of this, depending on who you talk to, you either say, oh, I can tinker and I'll be able to do what I want, or feel like it's pretty limited.
Yeah, and they are doing this manually in-house, this approval process. So they've got considerable manpower to do it, but there are, like I said, thousands and thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of games, titles that you can still download on Steam, little to big. There's no way that they've got the human power to go through every one of those and vet them over the years. So they stick to the ones that are the big releases or the big high profile stuff or whatever. Or really popular games that are showing up all the time. That's kind of where they focus on that. And I think that's probably all they can do. So they've left it to players to kind of figure it out past that. But most of what I play and what I've downloaded and what I've tried works out of the gate. That includes mouse and keyboard games. And this is a little bit weird. But the game, I meant to show, it's kind of hard to see in this lighting in here, but I'll try to do it again. But there are little pads on the side here. You can kind of see them.
Yeah.
Thumb pads, right? And they're on both sides. Those thumb pads are basically trackpads. So you can put your finger or thumb on those and use it like a mouse. And you will see, I won't do it in this interface. It depends on the game. But like if I have a point and click adventure game, I can thumb around on that like I would a mouse, and a cursor will move like the mouse. And then I'm clicking, one of the trigger buttons or the A button to act like a click or a double click, and that all works too. So some people are like, what if I don't like games that use control, or what if I don't like games that use mouse and keyboard, or the other way around? Either way, you're covered. They've tried to make a way to do it. Is it optimal? Is it as big and easy as a screen and a desktop and a big mouse pad? No, but it's great in a pinch, and I actually quite like it for like point and click adventure games. I think it works really well. So they've tried to kind of be all things to all players, but the emphasis is still very much on, this is a controller. Your best games are going to be those that use the standard controller layout, and you're going to get, that's where you're going to have the most fun.
Yeah, so that, I think that would be a follow-up question a lot of people would have is, okay, this sounds great, but if I'm maybe trying to save money, or, I've already got a gaming PC that I don't want to upgrade, is the Steam Deck on its own enough? Or do you kind of use it as a companion when maybe you're traveling or don't have an internet connection type thing?
Well, I took it on my cruise last year. That was actually kind of a big test for it, because I was like, I'm going to go away for 5 days. I'm not going to have internet. There's like a lot of reasons why I want to see how this does. And I loved it. But I'm also a big PC gamer, so I have all that stuff here. And I do think that if you're a hardcore PC gamer, this is if you can swing it, this is a no-brainer companion piece, because you're just taking what you're already doing with you, and it's great. That being said, if you're somebody who's like, well, I've got a kind of a crummy notebook at work, but when I come home, I really don't have anything, and I haven't played a console since the GameCube, and boy, I'd sure like to have more fun with whatever. This is a really good standalone device, like in the same way that the Switch is, but more so. There's more capability, more games, more choice. in this device than you'll ever find in the Switch. And like I said, you don't really need the desktop component at all. You can fire this up and you're good. You've got the entire store there. It's all available to you. Will every single game work? No. Will most of the ones that you'll ever care about work? Yes. And the added ability to plug it into a television or to play it on its own or whatever is a very nice bonus. So I was skeptical of that when I first purchased it. I just thought, yeah, we'll see. I feel like I'm getting this as partly for work because I want to be able to talk about this thing, but partly I just want to have this companion device. And really, I wouldn't want to have it if I didn't have the main device. But I've changed my tune on that. I think that this would stand on its own and does stand on its own as a way to get into the Steam ecosystem or to continue it without the PC component. And some people are going to grumble at that because they're just so hardcore PC heads. And I get it. I understand where you're coming from. I'm your people. But I think that the strength of this device is it can be any of those things and kind of all of those things at once. You could hook this up to a monitor right now, a keyboard and a mouse, which this dock supports, and you're off to the races. And it has a full, I can relaunch the thing or reboot the thing in desktop mode. And desktop mode is a full Linux operating system where I can do all the things you would do in Linux. It's all point and click, mouse and keyboard related. I can install stuff, drag stuff around, whatever. That's a place where you can do a lot of the tinkering and hacking if people are into that. It's all right there on the device. So you could do email here. You could do, video here. You could do YouTube here. You could do all that stuff if you really want to.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question because you mentioned that the screen, it isn't absolute top of the line as far as looks go, but when you're talking 7 inches, it's like, yeah, it's totally fine. But if you were watching video, say, can you do that? Can you load up Netflix and watch a streaming service or something like that from here?
You absolutely could. What's weird is, this is the thing I don't understand about it. I thought by now Netflix, Hulu, HBO, everybody would have made default sort of
options.
Like apps on the Steam store.
Yeah.
To just download and use. And maybe it's because it's this weird spread between two ecosystems and they'd show up on both and nobody needs it on the desktop or something. I don't know what the holdup is, but because you can run Edge and Firefox and just browsers in the operating system, that means you can do everything you just said. You can go to any one of those services and use it, but you'll use them like a computer.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And you can make them launchable. There's a way to make them launchable in Steam, but it's a little bit complicated. For example, I'm playing a lot of Game Pass streaming games on this. In order to do that, I had to go do a little hackery on the desktop mode. But now that I've done that, it's very easy for me to launch it from the main menu in the normal mode, and bam, I'm using Game Pass.
But it's not something that Steam Deck itself is going to walk you through. You kind of have to at least know what you're doing or look up the right Reddit thread type thing.
Yeah, and I think that may change over time. I think these apps might start showing up natively. And when they do, it'll make perfect sense because why not? I don't know why they don't already. There should be a Game Pass app on here already. I guess maybe they're not fully patched up their relationship with Microsoft. I don't know, but they basically, they've basically given you a computer that is very portable. So plugging this into a dock, or even not docked, you just have it plugged into a USB-C, like a dongle with 3 or 4 connections on it.
Yeah,
and it works like your PC. Just think of it as kind of a small device. The other thing I would say about the screen, because you just mentioned that, I didn't want to forget to mention this. It is big and very nice. It's a very nice screen. But in a world of OLEDs and micropixels and all this other stuff everybody's doing,
yeah,
that's the one area where I think the next generation one will probably feature a screen, probably an OLED screen or something equivalent to just take it to that next level. And maybe something that supports HDR or something like that. As it stands right now, it is a very bright, very nice screen. Nothing wrong with the screen, but it's just not, it's not what we consider like the cutting edge display that other devices have these days.
Yeah. Creme de la creme.
Yeah,
Cream of the crop.
Sure.
Whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As you're talking about this, Scott, I liken this very much too, and I've definitely been on both sides of this. People saying, oh, so you have a smartphone and you do everything on your phone and you bypassed a computer altogether. Now, of course, if you have a gaming PC and you want the Steam Deck, and maybe you tinker around with all sorts of options, of course you can do that, and you have more options because of that. But if you just have the Steam Deck alone, it sounds like you're saying, sure, if you're kind of coming from that world of hardcore gamer, this is also fun, and, different form factor. But someone like me who's like, yeah, I'm probably not going to get, a gaming rig, tomorrow. But I like the idea of something like this that, can easily go into a, I don't know, a tote bag and be with me on the go if I'm killing some time at the DMV type thing.
Right. That's exactly the kind of device it is. Now, that being said, it's pretty big. Like, I'll hold this up to the camera the way I hold it. It's a big device. Look at that.
Right. Yeah. This is not going in your back pocket.
No, definitely not. Although I can fit it in my front pocket if it's the right pair of jeans, but it's still, I look like I'm carrying around a key. Yeah, it's like a surfboard or something.
It's for, anybody who's just listening to the audio. Yeah, this is not a pocket device.
No, it's pretty large. I mean, this, just to give you a comparison, the Switch and the Switch Lite look downright tiny next to this thing. And I think that's on purpose. I think they were aiming for something that was beefier. They certainly needed the battery space to get a decent battery run out of this thing. And that's an important technical thing I want to mention real quick. Some games chew through the battery really quick. Some games hardly at all. And if you're doing things like Game Pass where you're streaming games, I can go all day. It just doesn't eat the battery at all. But if I'm playing something like Cyberpunk 2077, I might get 2 hours out of it, maybe less.
Yeah.
If I'm using a smaller indie game, something with pixels in it, a little less hard on the hardware or whatever, I might get 4 or 5, 6 hours out of that. So it's a big variable. There's a fan in this thing. It blows out of the top. I was hoping it was going to do that for me so I could have you hear it, but the game I'm playing right now is not making it do it. But
suffice it to say, it is not a silent device.
No, it is very quiet. I will say that. But if you're playing something that's pretty heavy duty, you will start eventually hearing like a hoo, not even a hum. It's just you can hear air blowing out of there. There were some problems in the early days of the device where some of them had a horrible high pitched whine. They've since fixed that, and all further devices have not had that. Which leads me to one thing I wanted to mention: support. I accidentally pulled this thing off of a table, and it snagged the corner of some furniture and destroyed one of the analog sticks. Basically, jammed it into itself to the point that I couldn't self do it. Probably could, but I didn't want to open the whole thing up, and I'm not that talented with like the guts of this stuff. So I thought, great, I'm gonna have to send this in. It's gonna cost me who knows what. I was so annoyed. So I contacted Steam, and they had that was an amazing experience. This is the thing I did not expect, because they're still they're a small company in that they're still solely owned. They're not public. So I don't really know what they're...
You almost expect the customer service to be like, they're not quite ready for prime time.
Yeah, it's either one or the other. It's going to be amazing or it's going to be bad. And with a big volume, they've been selling so many. They've been going crazy with this. It's been a big success. I just thought, well, I'm going to be on some horrible long list, and it's going to be terrible. It ended up being really quick. They got back to me right away. I sent them photos of it because they asked for it. And they said, this looks like the kind of thing that normally isn't covered, but it's just weird enough that we're going to do it. I said, oh, okay. So they had me package it up. They paid for that. I sent it back. This is what's hilarious. I sent it to what I thought was Washington, to get it fixed. And instead it went there, but then there's some kind of distribution thing. It ended up back in my own state at a licensed repair center that does these for them. And then was supposed to ship back to Washington and then back to me. It was all very weird once I figured it out. But anyway, the long and short of it is they fixed it. They did it in a really timely manner. I got it faster than I thought I was going to get it. Worked 100% perfectly when I got it back. It was kind of a joy to work with. Like, it was so easy to deal with them that part really sunk in. I was like, oh, these guys actually care about the future of this thing. They want this to go on. There's going to be a 2 and a 3 and a whatever.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just a flash in the pan.
I've had these experiences, not with the Steam Deck because I don't have one, but experiences with newish hardware devices where it's like something went wrong and you really get the sense the company is like, We just want to make it better. And this is a learning experience for us and no questions asked.
Yeah. Kind
You know,
of
I've
that,
had that, you know, with like a Fitbit device a couple years ago where they were just like, it's fine. We'll just like send you a new one. It's all good.
Yeah.
Sorry. Our bad.
Part of me wonders, though, I'm not going to lie. I think part of me wonders if they saw that I had over 2,000 games in Steam. And if they treat the whales any different than they do the minnows, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like, I'm not that I'm some big shot, and I'm not, but I mean, they can see your library. They know what you've got. They know the kind of volume you do.
Well,
that may help them determine, like, oh, well, you know what, we'll do this one because this dude's like, obviously he's been here a lot and he's paid for a lot of games and more than paid for this repair over and over many times. So let's just take care of him. I don't know.
Whether or not they think you're like, you know, cool, which you are, by the way, but like that aside, knowing that you're you're probably going to put this to the test,
right?
You know, more than somebody who, you know, maybe got it as a gift and is like, I don't know, I just don't really game, you know, and it sort of sits in a corner, which would probably be a little closer to what would happen at my household. Just knowing, you know, as a power user that you can offer a lot of input, you know, that if a company is smart, it's not that they're giving preferential treatment to power users, but they're listening to them.
Yeah,
because these are the people who help the ecosystem thrive.
Yeah, and from the support's perspective, just a tiny little note. My daughter, who also, like I mentioned, had one. She was in Iceland with hers, and they didn't have any carpet in this dormitory she was in for this art residency she was part of, and hers fell and shattered on the floor. By shattered, I mean the screen. Everything else seemed to be fine, but the screen completely borked. And when she got back to the States, she was all worried about what they were going to do. That was not covered because she didn't have an extended warranty or any kind of extra warranty. But it was only, I think, $89, free shipping back and forth, and it was fixed. And for an entire 7-inch screen, getting completely redone and fixed, that was pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
And they were quick about it. So even in those cases, it just felt like they're not nickel and diming. They just really want to be a platform people care about.
Yep.
And, you know, I know when I talk about these, I know I sound like I'm shilling for Valve. I just was so surprised initially and in the long term how much I've loved this thing. The only thing I'm afraid of is they're going to announce a number 2 at some point. I'm going to have to shell out money for that because that's how much I like it.
Well, you know, yeah, join the club of device lovers. Well, Scott, so, you know, as you mentioned, you're enthusiastic about Steam Deck. This is fun.
Sure.
You know, this is, you know, it's maybe not perfect, but you have created a lot of use cases for it, a great companion to your gaming PC. Is there anyone, you know, we're talking between $400 and $650 for the various models. Is there anybody who should not invest?
Oh gosh, that's an interesting way to put it. So your options out there these days, you know, there's a bunch of them. You can go get yourself a PlayStation 5, you can get yourself an Xbox Series X or S, or you can get yourself a Switch. Those are really your big competitors. Or you can get a gaming PC or some combination of those things. I can tell you as somebody, because of the work I do, I need to kind of have all of it. So they're all here and being used in various ways. The Steam Deck has made my use of everything else not plummet, but diminish. I just am less likely to go do what it takes to do to plop on the couch and get going on something than I am to just say, well, it's on Game Pass. I'll just play it up here on the couch while I'm hanging out with my wife when she's watching one of her dumb shows or something. I can do that. No offense to her, but you know what I'm saying? Like I have other choices now that this affords me that those didn't. And this device will also fairly easily remote play my PlayStation, remote play my Xbox, and remote play my PC just wirelessly through the house without any latency. So there's these advantages of those other devices working directly through the Steam Deck. And then ironically, Sony's best titles are coming out on PCs these days. And so I can go get Spider-Man, or I can go get, Last of Us, or I can go get whatever. And I can fire it up on my Steam Deck now, natively in Steam. So in a way, this is Sony's new handheld. Like it's kind of funky how it's changed the way I approach gaming and where I'm playing and spending most of my time. So back around to answer your question, this is probably not for anyone who, if you don't have any games on Steam, you're fresh to Steam, you've never been there before, and PC gaming has never been in your life. This is maybe a harder sell. I would probably say stick to the consoles you're used to. Don't go chasing waterfalls. I'm almost sang a song there. But anyway, the point is, like, don't get away from what you know already. You're fine where you're at. But it feels like most everybody's got something going on with something on the PC if they're gaming at all. And because of that, I feel like they're safe getting this thing. So it's actually kind of hard to say they shouldn't. If they've got the budget, the value is crazy here. If you've already got a bunch of, even if you had 50 other games in your library, that's all you had, not 2,000, but 50 other games, you're already getting a better value out of spending $600 for this thing than you would a brand new PlayStation 5 and no games to play.
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So yeah, you kind of know your lane. Not necessarily stay in it because, you know, we can all do different things.
Sure.
But yeah, take some stock into, you know, how much gaming do you already do? How much gaming do you want to do? And yeah, you know, are you new to Steam? This could be your entry gateway, right? But it sounds like from everything that you said, if you've already invested something into this platform, you know, game library and, you know, and other devices, etc. It makes a lot of sense. Like you said, there are times where you're like, I have a gaming PC, I don't really feel like sitting there. I'm just gonna, you know, use my deck instead.
I would say this too. A lot of people are always a little bit worried about first generation of anything. You know, Apple has a new notebook, and you're like, well, maybe I'll wait for version 2 or whatever. This is true of a lot of devices, a lot of manufacturers. You don't want the first foldable phone; you want the second or third one, right? So,
sure.
I would have. There are going to be people who feel that way about this or have felt that way. I will say this in their favor: it's surprising how well they stuck the landing on their first effort in this regard, and doing it during the pandemic, at least the tail end of it or the mid part of it, for launch and everything. Like, I don't know how I honestly don't know how they pulled it off and got so in the zone for a device that's technically the first generation of its kind.
Yeah.
They learned a lot from a lot of other things and their own experiences and everything else, and they're a big company and they can do a lot of cool creative stuff. But I am legitimately to this day surprised how well this works. It feels like 3-4 years down the road, not first gen. And I think that bodes well for whatever the future brings.
Well, Scott Johnson, such a pleasure. Not only because you're just really good at talking about gaming, but also this has just been a fun Live With It segment. I know that it's its own show. I know a lot of people out there might be on the fence about whether or not this is worth their money. Hopefully, you are now out there, dear viewer or listener, armed with more knowledge than ever to decide if Steam Deck is right for you.
If any of you, by the way, do get your output to 8K and 60 frames per second or 4K at 120 hertz, I would love to hear how you did it, because I just think that's insane. I know it's in the specs, but man, I don't know. I don't know who's doing that. Someone's doing that on an 8K TV. It just isn't me. So write in and let them know.
Oh, I bet somebody out there is like, I know how to do it. If so, feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com is where to send that advice. But as we wrap up this episode of Live With It, remember, we can only do shows like this with your continued support for us on Patreon. Thank you to everybody who supports us. We could not do any of our Daily Tech News Show franchise shows without you. Don't forget to check out all the stuff that patrons get for supporting DTNS by visiting patreon.com/DTNS. Until our next Live With It segment, I'm Sarah Lane. Thank you, Scott Johnson. And you've been listening to Live With It. We'll talk to you soon.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.